My name is Yasin Lu. I am the Assistant Head of Advocacy of the Nusrat Human Rights Club. My name is Halima Chikite and my position in the Human Rights Club is the Head of Advocacy.
I am Sulaiman Jallo, the President of Human Rights Club.
My slogan is break the silence and be honest to yourself.
We are going to stop the treacheries and the lucraries. This can lead to people dropping out of school. So access to education is not a guarantee that you're going to complete your education.
I am Mr. Ture, as you all know, a civic teacher in Nusrat Senior Secondary School. So I'm here to give an opening remark about this particular program. The theme of the program is training on protection and reporting mechanism against sexual violence and sexual harassment. Yes, more especially in school. Children like boys and girls, they all need safe environment whereby they will able to learn without facing any challenges. Yes, more especially the girl child. Sometimes it's common in learning centers and other places of work. Sometimes people face sexual harassment, which is not okay. People should be able to learn and work without facing threat in the environment where they are learning. Yes, so this program is a very important program. You people serve as ambassadors, whereby wherever you learn here, if you go, you spread the message. You make sure that you become defendants who give other people, young people, advice about how to protect themselves and how to report any issue if they find if they find themselves in a situation whereby they have been sexually harassed. Yes, so it's not a good thing. Everybody is supposed to stand against it because we are all from families, we are all from communities. We have sisters, we have children. Some of us have children, you know. So they should be safe wherever they are, so that they can be able to do their job without any fear. Yes. So that is the whole theme of the program, so that everybody can be protected wherever they are. Yes, and have a safe learning environment without facing any threat. Yes, from anyone.
How are you all? Are you hungry? Good afternoon. That's what I want to hear. Okay, my name is Aissatou Bojang Kuyate. You can call me Madam Kuyate. I am from Gambia Senior Secondary School. I'm the Senior Mistress of Gambia Senior Secondary School and the Teacher Coordinator of the Human Rights Club of Gambia Senior Secondary School. In our schools, we have a lot of clubs, but they are all synchronized, joined together. They are all under the Human Rights Club. We have the ECOWAS Club, we have the Girls Club, we have Hope Life International. We have a lot of clubs. Few are only separated, but most of them are under me. So today, your madam here, Fatou Sarr, is my colleague. We are together in this project, Human Rights under Amnesty International. Today, we will give you lectures on training about child protection against sexual violence, sexual harassment, and the legal mechanisms or reporting in the Gambia. Okay, by the end of the program, you will learn a lot about sexual harassment, what it means, the meaning of sexual harassment, the meaning of sexual violence against children, and then you will also know the mechanisms. When you talk about the mechanisms, and the legal mechanisms mean the areas where you can go out, places you can go out to give your reports in case of any sexual abuse. You understand? Yes, you will learn about all those things before the end of the day. Okay. And then you will also understand about the different types of sexual harassment, like defilement, incest. I know some of you know all of those ones. Fondling, molestation, etc. There are many ways in which, girls are harassed. Okay, I don't want to be biased here by saying that girls are harassed. Even boys are also harassed, isn't it? But the most vulnerable ones are women and girls, isn't it? That's why we always mention girls. But nowadays, boys are also harassed. Just recently, I think you saw the message on TV, isn't it? A boy, a male child, was raped to death. So it means that not only girls are harassed nowadays, okay? And then this sexual harassment happens in our community, it happens in our schools, it happens in our families, isn't it? It happens everywhere. And there are certain places also where it happens frequently. So you'll be taught about all those things, okay, by the end of the training. We have our presenter here, Madam Jaune. She wanted to do a presentation on PowerPoint, and then I will follow suit. We'll do some discussions, but she will do the presentation on PowerPoint, and then I will also give you a group work to see whether you have learned something. It's all going to be on sexual harassment and sexual violence against children. Okay. Now there are certain cases that we witness about sexual violence, sexual harassment. You will see the perpetrator will say that this one she agreed, she was my girlfriend. But when whilst the girl was a minor or the boy was a minor, so that means that a child has no consent. Who is a child? Anybody that is under the age of 18. Even if that person agrees to that, intercourse, the person do not have consent. So the adult should, use his or her maturity. Why do I say his or her maturity? Because now, sexual violence can be done, with both sexes, isn't it? A girl can harass a girl. Do you know that? Huh? A boy can harass a boy. Have you ever heard about that? Yes, you have this, isn't it? You have lesbians. I want to hear the names from you people. Yes. So a girl can harass a girl, and then a boy can also harass a boy. The sex doesn't matter. Okay? Whether male or female, that's what I mean, isn't it? Yes. So all these things are happening in our society. Okay? So that is sexual violence, a forceful sex without the consent of the child. Okay, especially when it is done to a minor. Then you have another one called sexual harassment. What is sexual harassment? What do you understand by the word sexual harassment? Yes.
This can be like unwanted behavior. That is when someone make them feel unsafe, humiliated, or uncomfortable.
Very good. And can you give me an example?
Like, for instance, touching someone.
Very good. Touching someone near the chest here. Hey, you. Sometimes it can happen everywhere, even inside the school. Your teachers can even see you going, hey, let me see your back. Just like that. Okay? All those are, forms of sexual harassment, isn't it? Or by even pulling your hand, holding you, touching your hands, touching your fingers, just like that. All those things are, form of sexual harassment. Or even, telling you certain words which are very, very bad, which are very, very hard. Hey, you look sweet, oh. Hey, you look good, oh. You are fresh, things like that, okay? All those things are ways of, sexual harassment, okay? So we want to make sure that by the end of her presentation, all of you will learn a lot about sexual harassment, sexual violence, and the ways and manners of protecting yourself. Do you understand? Okay, let me ask you this question. Can sexual harassment be protected? Can it be prevented? How? By raising awareness in the society, isn't it? In schools, isn't it? And another important place, setting boundaries, but there is a place where we should go and sensitize. That is our family. Somebody mentioned school, isn't it? The family is very important. Do you know that most of sexual harassment cases happen in families? Do you know that? How do you call that? We call it incest. Huh? Form of sexual harassment done by close relatives, isn't it? So it could be done by your stepfather. Huh?
In some cases, daddies.
Daddies. You see what she said? In cases, some cases, even daddies, biological fathers. I heard about the case, it happened in Basel. You understand? A biological father raped the daughter and impregnated the daughter. Even in Kotu here, I heard about that case here, within the greater Banjul here. All these things are forms of, sexual harassment. You see? And fondling. You heard about that word? Fondling. I think it's pronounced as fondling. Fondling. It's a way of sexual harassment. So we'll tell you about all those things. I just want to give an explanation of this. All those things are in the presentation. But it is unfortunate that we don't have light. But once we do some of the explanations, we do some discussions, and then she will send the presentation to your madam. You understand? Then your madam will now forward it to the president or to the vice president and the vice president. Then you yourself, you the students, you can form a group and have a program on your own. Do you understand? We invite the members of the Human Rights Club and even other students that are not part of the Human Rights Club. And then you teach them everything about, this particular topic, because it is very, very important. It's very important for you to understand these things: sexual harassment, sexual violence, and ways of protecting them. Do you understand? Ways of protecting them is very, very important. Okay? Yes, I was asking you whether you know what is foundling. Foundling is a form of sexual harassment whereby the individual is not actually penetrated, but at least by trying to touch the person. Do you understand? To give that person pleasure. Do you understand? For example, you can be sitting somewhere. Some men do it, they are just crazy. Okay? Sorry to say that because I said that I don't want to be biased here. But they'll be sitting near girls and they try to put their hands inside. You understand? Inside the private part of the girl. Or they can be sitting even inside a vehicle or places where music jamborees happen and the like. You see somebody trying to put their hands inside just to touch your breast, just like that. Okay, all those are ways of fouling. As I said, sexual harassment can be done in many different ways. Okay, by even molesting you. Molestation is a form of sexual harassment too. Okay, talking to somebody, telling the person certain words which are very, very, nasty. Okay? So I think I can stop here, isn't it? And then allow you to continue. Then after we do the questions. Her name is Madam Johnny.
So Ture has already talked about our training today. So it's one-day training on protection and reporting mechanisms against sexual harassment and sexual violence, right? So I really normally need, I don't want to be here because I know many of the things that we are going to be talking about, you already know a great deal of them. All right, so we should, we should interact and then until the end of the session. So my name is Aya Jane, right? I've already mentioned that.
So basically, this is what we are going to, like Madam Bojang Kuyate has already mentioned. So what we have on the table of contents is we are going to go through the introduction and the context. Why is this topic even important? Right? Why is the topic of sexual harassment and sexual, violence even important? Within education, why is it an issue in the education, and why is it important for schools and basically, generally learning environments, right? And so after that, we will try to understand the concepts like you have already done or with Madam Kuyate. So we're going to look at the different forms of sexual harassment and sexual abuse. So one thing I have observed here, so sometimes people will define sexual harassment in one way and then sexual violence in other ways. But sometimes you will realize that people will refer to them as the same thing. So you will have so many different, basically, forms of what we mean by sexual harassment and sexual violence, okay? Then after that point, we will go to protection against sexual harassment. So basically, we are going to look at some of the activities, some of the strategies, right? Like I said, many of the things that we are going to talk about, you know most of them, basically. So we are going to look at certain ways, at individual levels, at school level, at the institutional level, of what we can do in order to basically protect ourselves from some of this abuse and harassment. So the last part of the presentation is going to be recognizing signs, right? So we can be able to tell, like we all know. So we can see certain people, they are unusually super quiet. Someone who is used to interacting with you all of a sudden is quiet, or you can see certain things on them that could tell you something is wrong, right? So the signs might not tell you always that it's a sexual harassment case, but then in all of the real cases, some of these signs are present, right? So these are also things that we are going to look at together. So we also look at reporting and the legal documents, around sexual harassment in school. So there are legal documents, around sexual harassment, and these documents give rights to victims. Basically, what you can do, and then has established the type of punishment. So somebody can be imprisoned for life. Basically for sexually harassing someone, especially in learning environments. So we are going to look at all of this. So since you are an organization, and obviously not every student is a member of this organization, I'm expecting that you will also use these resources, right? And do your own sensitizations. Sensitize the other students that are not members of the Human Rights Friendly Club. Okay, so that is what we expect. So because of that, I have in the presentation, I have put in links where you can have some of these legal documents that you can use in your own sensitizations. Okay. So like I said, first we are going to look at the context. We're going to understand the background and the importance. So like I said, this is going to be interactive. Why do you think? Why should we even talk about sexual harassment and sexual violence in schools? Why should we talk about it? Why is it an issue? Yes, cool. Yeah, I'll continue. Yes. Yes, because it is becoming rampant. It is happening in schools, right? Yes, that is another reason, yeah.
Prevents education, especially like some kids when they encounter some of these things, they drop out of school because
Marshall, yeah, it is tampering with education, right? So mostly, the services that we have from obviously our educational institutions, lower, basic, high school, tertiary education is, educational services. But you will realize that if the students are affected in some ways, that is going to affect, their education, their level of performance, their concentration levels, everything that is required, for them to be able to have like a comfortable, journey throughout their education, right? Okay, another person. So one, it is prevalent. Two, it affects, educational quality of students. So we have to put a name to the behaviors that are considered, inappropriate and harassment, right? So that is really great, brilliant. Yeah. So you will not see the negative effects in the short term, but you will also see these effects in the long run, right? That the person will have to deal with. So, because you are a human rights, friendly club, so what I have first on my slide, basically, it's a violation of human rights, right? Sexual harassment, is unlawful, and it is a violation of human rights. It's violating the right to education and to all other forms of right that people have, right? So second, like you said, it's prevalent, right? It is now a common. So this is a form of violence, just like we have domestic violence. With couples who are married, for instance, or we have violence. Now, you do see on the news how people are stabbing, people. Just like those kind of violence, this is also a violence, mostly in, learning environments, mostly in schools. So it is prevalent, like you have rightly mentioned. And that is why we have to really talk about it. That is why it is even now an issue. Right? So just to put some statistics, not just in Gambia, so it is a worldwide problem. It's not just in the Gambia, so it's everywhere in the world, but we are kind of like zeroing in or on the continent, for example. So for example, I have two countries, statistics. So in Nigeria, for example, so there was this survey that was done, and 70% only, among the graduate school-going people, and 70% of them said they have been harassed, right? So we see how much of a problem it is. We see how prevalent this issue is in our communities and in our learning environments, right? So in Ethiopia, for example, also 78% of graduates, so we are not sure, at what level of education, but these are people that are going to school. And this can happen everywhere, not just at high school level, but even in lower and secondary school levels, and also at tertiary, institutions, right? So in the Gambia, according to the Afrobarometer survey 2025, so this was not done just, from those people who are going to school. It was just any Gambian that they came across. So according to this survey, 20% of people believe that, especially girls are harassed in schools. Yeah. So I personally believe that if, the survey was only done within school going kids, the number would have been higher. But even if it is 20% in reality, even if that is the case, that is something. Like, it means this is a real issue that we basically need to, talk about and make sure that they don't happen, right? So, like you said, so it affects victims' access, retention, completion, and performance in education, right? So, do you guys realize that access to education is no guarantee that you're going to graduate, for example? You can get enrolled in school. Like the time you were coming from grade 9, you have admissions in Nusrat, but that was just a step, to being educated. There are a whole lot of, issues that can affect you. So I'm very sure somebody have talked about how, this can lead to people dropping out of school. So access to education is not a guarantee that you're going to complete your education. It's not a guarantee that you're going to, graduate. So that is why this issue is important, because it can lead to so many people dropping out of school or even not performing. So we all know Nusrat, y'all are brilliant students, but you should also realize that some people fail examinations not because they are not capable, because they are dealing with certain stuff. That is why they are not capable of even performing. And this is an issue. Sexual harassment and sexual violence can basically affect some people's, performance, not just because they do not have the ability to read like the higher performing students are doing, but because they are battling with these issues that mostly they are silent about. In our cultures, we don't want to talk about these things. We don't want to talk about sex. Today we are going to talk about it a whole lot. Yeah, for obviously for learning purposes, but there should be a whole lot of sensitization around this. Yeah. So it can affect the retention level of students. It can affect the basically the completion level and also performance in education. So this is also another reason why it is important that we deal with this issue, within schools. So we have already talked about that. We have talked about that with Madam Kuyate, that this happens to everyone, regardless of our gender. Yeah? But there's also another reality, right? Mostly girls are the most affected, right? So it doesn't mean boys are not, sexually harassed. Now it is basically becoming prevalent. Boys getting harassed. They can be harassed by adult, women or by fellow men, like you guys have talked about. So we can all be harassed, and but then evidence and studies have shown that mostly the victims are girls, right? Okay. So like we said, this have many impacts. Sexual harassment and violence have many impacts on students. So we have already talked about how it affects retention levels, how it already affects completion levels, and the performance of students in the educational journey, right? It also causes dropouts, right? It can lead to higher dropout levels, among students, yeah. But it can also lead to some other stuffs. What kind of stuff that can this lead to? Yeah. Oh gosh, I didn't have that, but that's so true, right? So normally mental health is not something important within ourselves, but things can be so hard, especially now. That you can be sitting and contemplating about what if I just end it? That's a thought that kind of like crosses people's mind most of the time. Economy is hard, so many things are hard. We're having complications at family level. We're having stuff that we can't even talk with, even with our own parents, not with even our best friends. So obviously this is something that this can lead to. And thank you very much. So I will have to update this slide and basically include that. I have not included that. Thank you so much. So this can lead to people being isolated, because most of the time we have a culture of silence in the Gambia. Huh? Yeah, yes. And people do not want to talk about it. Or we have this culture of blaming the victim in, right? So most of the time we are blaming the victim. Instead of the one basically causing the harm, we're blaming the victim. Well, like, what did you do? Mostly that's what we start with. When we come into contact with, people who have suffered from, sexual harassment and violence, right? So mostly it's about you, the victim. What have you done that contributed to it? Sometimes people will say, even not only here in Gambia, but people will say, what have you put on? You know, maybe that's the case. What were you wearing? Why did you go there? Even though we have to be careful with where we go, not because, in a perfect situation, we shouldn't be worried about this. In a perfect situation, we shouldn't be worried about it. So it doesn't matter. I know we have, religious guidelines. For example, I'm putting on the hijab. We will say, okay, you have to dress like this. Many of you, if not all of you, are putting on the hijab, right, for instance. But, nobody should say just because you were not dressed modestly, that is why they harassed you. That's not a reason. That's not a reason, to harass anybody. So it should not be about. So when we talk with the victims, that is also important. It is something that we need to talk about. I don't know if we will have time for that, but if we don't, you guys will have it in the slides. Okay. So we need to know how to approach the victim and avoid blaming them. So sometimes we might be blaming the victim without even knowing, because this is something that we are just so used to. So many things that we do, we would not have done if we know how consequential or how wrong they are, right? So that is why these kind of forums are really very important. It can lead to trauma and even long term, in the long run. You can deal with this for the rest of your life. The guilt, the shame that does to you, and especially living in this culture and environment that doesn't give much importance to your mental health, right? The only time we are basically, concerned about people's health condition is when we can check and see. Balobe can do it now. You understand? Mostly that is when we are concerned with health issues around here, right? But when you say mental health, people are like, hey, it won't say it. Like, toughen up, and you need to toughen up. But mental health it's a real thing. You have so many conversations going on in your head. I don't know if you have it, but I do have it. Sometimes when I have stress, I have so many things going on in my head. So many things being told to me. And this is something that we need to prioritize. So trauma, depression, anxiety, right? It leads to all of those things. Physical injuries. Yeah. So this happens. That is why that is some sign. That is a sign that you can basically tell. You can even have anxiety around sex. It might not be enjoyable for you in the long run because of how it started. In the beginning, because it was so violent, it was so rough. I'm sorry for my language, guys. But this can really make you not to want it, not to like it. So there are cases like, I have a friend who, with the FGM, some people, they get sealed. So I have a friend who went through a whole traumatizing situation where, after marriage, they had to unseal. And because of that, she doesn't like sex. She doesn't like sex. Like, she gets anxiety, whenever, it is for her to engage in it or something. So these are things that, are really very important. So everybody can become, uncomfortable from the situation, right? So even with stress and anxiety, it doesn't just stop at the victim. It's spread out. People that love you can be affected because of the situation that you find yourself in. Yeah. So these are all impacts that it can have on students. What about another impact? It can lead to.
Remember, this sexual harassment also can be done by women.
Yeah.
You understand? It can also be done by women.
Yes.
Two sex. Okay?
Yeah.
You can be harassed by a girl or an older woman. A boy can also be harassed by an older man. These are things that are happening now.
Within ourselves.
Yeah.
Within ourselves.
So, but the most important thing I want to talk about here, before you go further, that is, you should try to identify the signs. That's what you are doing with journey. Identify the signs. Now, these signs can be physical, and the other ones can be emotional. The physicals are easily seen. For example, you can see somebody having injury. Do you understand? having blood stains. Do you understand? For example, somebody who has just been disvirgin, you'll see blood stain, or the person who might not be able to walk properly. Okay, those are physical signs that you can easily recognize. But the emotional signs are difficult to recognize. And those ones you need to be very careful to be able to see. You might see a change of behavior in an individual. It could be your friend inside the school. You can see, a change of behavior. You can ask your friend, what's happened? What is going on? You can ask. If the person refuses to talk to you, you can also report to your teachers. Do you understand? It can also lead to depression, trauma. You just see somebody just sitting alone without even talking to anybody. If you ask questions in class, somebody who used to answer all the questions will now be quiet. That's why it is also good for teachers to be very, very vigilant also, to be very, very observant, looking at their students, looking at their children. Somebody who used to ask a lot of questions, somebody who used to answer a lot of questions, just start, keeping quiet. If a question is asked, you will obviously know that this girl understands the question and knows the answer, but she will not talk. All these are, emotional signs of sexual harassment. Or somebody might just stay at home without coming to school. Somebody might just stay at home. Sometimes you are inside the classes. Somebody who used to be present every day, when you observe that the person is not coming to school, you can call the parents. Do you understand? And then start asking questions. Okay? Ask them if the person is sick or the person is sick or not. Some of our parents are not very, very vigilant. They are not, very, very observant. Like our teachers also. Some of our teachers are not even observant. Some teachers are very observant. You can communicate to those teachers as human rights, members. Okay? That's why you are learning these things. As human rights members, you call your madam or call any other authority, okay? That you think that would be of help to that particular victim. Because it is happening in the schools. It is rampant. That's why we see it necessary to organize such kind of things in schools. Children are more vulnerable right now, mostly the girl child. Some are harassed and they will keep quiet. They will not talk about it. The culture of silence in the Gambia. Everybody wants to be quiet. Everybody wants to feel ashamed. You are staying with an uncle. Every day the uncle will be harassing you. You just be keeping quiet. If you cannot tell your mother, maybe your mother will not believe you because some parents will not believe you. Wow, what have you done? How are you sitting? Those are the kind of questions we ask, isn't it? In our society here, even if somebody is raped, people will always have a bad mind about it. Some will trust, some will not trust. What the guard was putting on was not good. So that means that even if you put on a trouser, you should be raped. Even if you put on a skirt, you should be raped. That is very unfair, isn't it? That is unfair. Okay, so we try to be, studying people, checking on them, and then be helping them. And then break the culture of silence. That's what I want you to go with today. No more silence. Do you understand? No more silence. Break the culture of silence. When you are inside the home, your stepfather touch you in a way that you don't want to report the case. If you're going to report it to your mother, because maybe your mother is married to that stepdaddy, talk to an auntie, talk to an uncle. Or you can even come to school and then talk to your teacher. Anytime we talk about teachers here, we talk about the female here, but there are some male teachers also. They are very, very good and they are very, very careful. I do see it in our school. So male teachers, they are just like father figures. People can talk to them. Girls can go to them, talk to them, explain, their problems to them and they can easily solve it. Okay? I think today you'll go with that word, no more silence, isn't it? No more silence. Don't allow anybody to harass you. Don't allow anybody to touch you in a way that you don't like. We are going to stop the toucheries and the lookeries. Okay? We are going to stop it.
About two things that it lead to. So sometimes pregnancies can come out of this, right? Sometimes pregnancies can come out of this. So you can get pregnant the very first time you engage in sex, in sexual activities. So this could be a case that we would not like. We will not like situations where we will need to abort, pregnancies and so on and so forth. But pregnancy is something that can come out of this, and that is why it's very important. And after pregnancy, something else can come. What happens in our societies when someone becomes pregnant? Abortion, the abortion issues that can also be really very problematic. Sometimes, like we said, we do not even want our girl, people, society to know that they're pregnant. So sometimes we might go through the bad way to try to abort, and that has led to deaths. Like I have known a case, that where it basically led to death. The person just took in some pills and then bleeded to death. That happened. Unfortunately, because of an unwanted pregnancy. So this can happen. And pregnancy comes with so many, issues also for those of us who are, who were pregnant before, and have kids. It's really difficult, especially for someone who was not really prepared for it. Yeah, the psychological trauma, the depression, and everything, the shame that you have to go through, the bodily changes that happen that you are not prepared for are all problems. And so sometimes another thing happens because of these harassments, early marriage. So sometimes the solution that society will give to someone who, became pregnant out of wedlock is just to get married. Sometimes they might even want to marry that person to the perpetrator, to the person who caused that harm. They would want to do that. And so for a school-going child, that is not fair because now they would not, most probably continue their education. Yeah, and that is why we talked about how completion rates and graduation rates can be affected because of sexual harassment and sexual violence. Okay, yeah. So that is why it is important. So schools are really critical nurturing spaces for children's development, for adults' development. So this is not only happening at lower levels, secondary levels, at higher levels. It's also happening in tertiary educational institutions, right? Sexual harassment. Yeah. So it is important to talk about this so that we can provide guidance on the expected standards of behavior. So already you guys know certain behaviors that are not appropriate. Yeah. So we will get to see more of them. And, through that we'll be able to see the standard, accepted, forms of behavior that we should be accepting and with which forms of behavior we should basically be raising the alarms. Yeah. I'm talking about this is that somebody mentioned it, right? Is to provide supportive environment to make sure that victims basically report this incident. So through these conversations and all of that, this one can encourage victims to basically report these cases, right? It can lead prostitution. Goes on in the head can be really very dangerous, and it leads to so many things, if not eventually to basically losing your life. So the state is supposed to be secular, non-religious. Yeah, the state is supposed to be secular, and so they can always do something about it. And they can also intervene in issues of religious matters. We have seen that in the case of the FGM ban policy, right? It's a religious thing, but it has been banned by the state. Yeah, so the state can intervene, obviously intervene. Yeah, and so now defining sexual harassment and violence. So like I said, sometimes people will define them differently. So there are so many terms. So sometimes you'll hear sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, sexual violence, and so on and so forth. So sometimes you will see people defining sexual harassment as the more subtle ones, the ones that are not really apparent, that you cannot directly say it, but obviously they are harassment. And when we talk about violence, then we are talking about engaging in the act itself, with force and with cause and without consent and so on. But sometimes you see people, referring to all of this as sexual harassment or sexual violence. So basically that is the approach that I have basically taken. So the important part of, defining sexual harassment and sexual, violence, as we have already done, is that it involves, so normally there are two parties. The one who is the perpetrator, basically causing the sexual harassment, and the one who is the victim, basically at the receiving end, right? And then so, in defining it, it involves unwanted, non-consensual sexual behavior, right? So this is not based on consent. Somebody is not giving you any permission, to come to them, to do certain things to them, or to be engaged in sexual acts with them. So sometimes it is super forceful, and so on and so forth. And the one basically committing the crime of sexual harassment or sexual violence, right? And so, like we already are aware of, guys, So it can be physical. Basically, it can be verbal. It can also be non-verbal. Non-verbal, like, Madam Bojan Kuyate have already done. Like people signaling you, sometimes guys can do that. You can be sitting in the midst of people and they're only talking to you. They're only signaling you, and other people might not be aware of what is happening. Yeah, so creating hostile atmospheres, sending explicit messages or images. So this can be a non-verbal kind of sexual harassment. So for example, you can be communicating with someone through WhatsApp, for instance, or maybe through TikTok and all of the other social media platforms. And all of a sudden, you didn't ask for it; they send you a nude picture, of a genitalia, for instance, because they're trying to invite you, without saying anything. So this can really basically happen, and it is part of sexual harassment. So this is something that we should be aware of, within ourselves, facial expressions and so on and so forth. So verbal, outright invitations to having sexual affairs, are all, obscene comments or gestures. People can do so many gestures. Sometimes it's so disgraceful, the type of gestures that they do. Sexual flirtations or advances. Yeah, and so we can see physical, type of sexual harassment. So somebody could be going and you're trying to block their ways and so on and so forth. Yeah, all of those can be whistling, leering, and all of that. Even sometimes long gaze, right? So it's not normal. You can look. Communication requires that you have eye contact, sorry. But certain eye contacts are not normal. And you can easily tell that this is not a normal eye contact. So people who basically want to do something, around harassment or sex will look at you in certain ways that we need to be aware of. And this is something that we need to be even on the lookout around our kids. Even if you are somebody who do not have a kid, but you have like a younger brother or sister, you should be mindful of how adults around them are basically looking at them and so on and so forth. Sharing private sexual materials of another person. So this is harassment. We are seeing that now in the Gambia, in the news, for example. So you are dating someone, it's all nice, especially in the beginning, to the point that you allow yourself to send certain pictures. And these people can use that against you. Breakup happens, guys. Divorces happen. The one that you were so much in love with, the one that you will go to war for, one day is someone that, can use a nude picture against you. So this is something that we really need to be careful with, yeah? Mr. Tura, you want to say something? You're laughing?
They released the videos or the pictures, but the phone had a problem, so they took it to a mechanic. So the mechanic have access to those videos and pictures. He transferred in his own phone, then he later released them. So sometimes anything can happen. Like these medias, these phones, electronic gadgets. There are certain materials you don't leave them there. It's not safe. Anything can happen. You can lose the phone. Somebody found the phone, and then the person go and open the phone, then find those materials there. So you can even forget take those phones to the mechanic, and the mechanic when they open it, they can have access to those things. Yes, and they expose it.
So why is that person looking into pictures? You're just supposed to repair it.
Yes.
That's why if I want to repair my phone, they ask for the password. I don't give them the password. I don't tell them, what do you need the password for? You are making the screen. Just make the screen and give me my phone. You can make the screen without going to the password. I just want to check whether the screen is working or not. I said, if you put a new screen there, it will work. No need for it to work. They can even go in. Some of them,
they have already even talked about things that have not come yet. So yeah, they'll soon be.
look at the legal framework.
Oh, okay, legal framework. Exactly.
Where they can report and then they do a group work.
Okay, cool.
These
Yeah.
girls are smart.
They already know.
I don't want to be biased, but these girls
No, they're all smart. They all.
The words you are talking, but you are not talking that much, huh? I want to see you talking, huh?
I hope we have not been biased. Have we been biased?
No,
Have we been biased?
Yes,
Yes, he's saying kind of, and you need to bring it to.
Who said that we are biased?
Yes, and he's taking the mic. Yes.
We are not biased.
Normally we are biased. Okay, and we're sorry for that.
No, but when we came, we were not biased. We mentioned about, girls being raped, girls being harassed, harassed, and boys also been harassed.
Yes.
But there's one thing, we did not mention the word rape, did we? So the sexual harassment, the types of sexual, I did not mention rape.
Yeah, it is there.
My name is Yasin Lu. I am the Assistant Head of Advocacy of the Nusrat Human Rights Foundation.
My name is Halima Chidite, and my position in the Human Rights Club is the Head of Advocacy.
I am Sulaiman Diallo, the President of Human Rights Club.
Okay, I can see a lot of things has motivated me, and I can see it's the passion that I have for speaking up. Because we can say human rights has to do with giving people the platform where they voice out things that they feel like others might be in need of. So yeah, I can say one of them is speaking up when it comes to people's rights, and then standing up for what is right also.
Well, for me, what I like to encourage is really to stop the silence. Like sometimes in our presentations, when we, even as the club, we like to encourage, there's something we like to say, which is silence help, injustice grow. So, and one of the biggest problems we face is silence, so that is what we're trying to eradicate, even though it's a bit difficult to do so.
Well, what really motivates me was since my junior school, since I was a very small boy in lower grades, I was a class prefect there. And then our teacher, he was working with UNICEF, and he always say, he always quote a word by saying spice. He always say, Suleiman, you should be on spice. And I actually asked him, what is a spice? He said that spice, he said the literal meaning is you speak up for people and you protect people, and you involve people, no matter which race they belong to or no matter what it is, even if they are disabled. You should involve people and see you encourage, you should be someone who encourages people. And he said, you will encounter many difficulties, but as far as you are in for humanity, you will still prosper. And that was things that really motivated me to become a member, and I see the potential with me. So I said, let me apply for this particular position, and finally, alhamdulillah, I got it.
The biggest challenge we face as activists or members of the Human Rights Club is getting people to speak up about things that happen to them, about things that happen to other people that they know about, and injustices they see around them in their environments. It can be in their homes, in the school especially.
We face a lot of challenges, especially as being part of the advocacy team, because I can say at times we see issues that are going on in the school, and then once we take a step to approaching those situations, students might be like feel tired, they will not open up, they will keep silence and keep things in them without voicing it out. So we find it very challenging, and then we like face a challenge of having that particular information that we want to get from them, so that we can know the necessary step that we can take. So I can see that is a very big challenge, because in that we cannot be like function as a good team, because we have to, before we function as a good team, we must have people that are ready to help us, and the only way they can help us is by being open up to us and telling us what they are facing.
Students not willing to speak up. Because even if you ask people, you can only help people when they give you the information. Because for you to solve a particular problem, you need evidence. You need evidence, and like you should not go by a heart. You should go with solid evidence that you know that they will be able to back you up. And those evidence, the only way you can have it is by asking the victim to tell you about it. But if you ask most of the students here, they are too afraid of being kicked out in the school. That's why most of them will not tell you what is it. I think that is a big challenge that we face.
Yeah, I have learned a lot of things, and it is very important, because the theme was protecting children against sexual violence and sexual harassment, which is actually very important, because a lot of times, not only in schools, but outside, we face harassment, violence. Not only female do face it, but actually the opposite gender. And here today, I learned a lot of things. I learned that these things, once you're being harassed or find yourself in sexual violence, you can actually report to maybe institutions or trusted person. It can be your teacher coordinator in your school, or you can contact 1913, where you have like people that are so anonymous and they respect privacy, that we are not going to be exposed on what particular thing that we go and like you want them to fight for you. And the other thing is we have learned that keeping silence does not help us. Once, if we want people to actually help us, we have to voice out things that we are going through, things that are confronting us, or things that are keeping us distracted as students.
So before today, I also think that I thought I knew so much about harassment, but when I came here, I was proven wrong. I learned about the difference between sexual violence and sexual harassment. I learned about things like grooming, more on rape, the effects that it has on people, especially on students and youth in general. And I learned so much, and I'm glad that I was able to contribute a little. And it was, I would say the event was a success.
Well, first of all, I have learned a lot from this particular workshop because back then I do have a misunderstanding of sexual violence and sexual harassment, and more especially as in society, when people talk of sexual violence and sexual harassment, people only consider female. But here I was able to know that even males are harassed nowadays, and it is both. And also, it is not necessarily someone to be the opposite gender to harass that particular person. You can be of the same gender while that person is harassing you. And also, I think it is very important because people need to be aware of it. Because if we look at it in the society, most of the things that people do, they do not know that it is a form of harassment, while it is. And for them telling us about this thing, for us also, we do have our general meetings every Saturday, which is tomorrow. And in our general meeting, every day we bring a particular topic to raise awareness to the general members, to tell them about it. So I think it will be very important for us to go to that platform and tell people about what are sexual violence and harassment and its types.
My slogan is break the silence and be honest to yourself, because breaking the silence only doesn't have like once you break the silence, you like being dramatic when you speak up. But once you break the silence, be honest of the particular thing that happens. So being honest comes with, once you break the silence, say the things that are going to happen. Say what sentence, report one thing, and say the truth. That will save you.
My slogan is the same as my teacher: spice.
Spice.